We're coming to you live from the Islamabad newsroom at Pakistan TV Digital with a huge news coming from the United States of America. The president, particularly, has come out publicly accepting the 2 week ceasefire proposed by the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. How significant is this, Saqib, with what we've seen and about an hour and a half left in that deadline that Trump had initially proposed? How significant is this that militarily the US is finally agreeing to stop their operations?
I think it doesn't get bigger than this for the world. And I think the context has to be provided, and the context is that it's based on intervention from the Pakistani side, Pakistani Prime Minister and Field Marshal Asim Munir. In fact, President Trump, in his Truth Social post, he has specifically mentioned that based on conversations with PM Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, wherein they requested to hold off destructive force being sent tonight to Iran. So it's in Pakistan's history, I've never seen that Pakistan has had this much influence, and especially when there was a chatter of a third world war. And tonight, when President Trump was almost ready to strike Iran, and probably using his own words, he wanted to end a civilization.
Annihilate,
You talk about
civilization.
talk about Persian civilization. It's one of the oldest civilizations of the world, and he mentioned that he might, end that civilization. So it's historic. Pakistan has scored big, though it's a very fragile ceasefire only for 2 weeks. But Pakistan has earned this victory, and probably the whole world should be thankful to Pakistan right now.
Donald Trump in his post also said that this will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran. What does peace with Iran look like? I am going to ask our correspondent from Lahore, Faraz, who's joining us in this live. Faraz, can you hear us loud and clear?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
So, what do you think this 2 week ceasefire mean for the rest of the world, considering the crude oil prices are at all times high? You've kept a really close eye at the economy and everything that surrounds it. How do you think this will impact the world now?
Absolutely, Asfania. What we saw that after December 2025 low of crude oil prices around $55 per barrel, oil prices have actually jumped over 100%, Brent crossing $115 per barrel. So did US WTI. But as soon as the announcement has came, we've seen oil price, US WTI has crashed about 10% so far. After US-Iran war, we saw Strait of Hormuz being nearly choked. Due to that, global oil markets went into haywire, and what we saw that that impact actually went to on the fuel pumps, on our wallets, on our daily grocery bills. But after this announcement, the world is expecting that the volatility in the global stock markets is going to reduce. There's going to be some sort of stability. Oil prices are going to reduce. The shipments that are going to the ships that were stuck in Strait of Hormuz, their smooth sailing is most expected. And after that, of course, oil prices are going to stabilize, and of course, every wallet is going to feel the relief following Pakistan's historic and unprecedented diplomacy. Also, what we saw that 2 minutes or 10 minutes after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's statement or tweet, Wall Street took the initiative and took the lead, and it was there were clear signs that how Wall Street is reacting to Prime Minister's statement, because there has never been in history that Pakistan's Prime Minister statement is moving or shaking markets in New York or markets in London. But what we saw today was historic. That one tweet from Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, one tweet from Pakistan's Prime Minister, and Wall Street reacted. And right after the statement, right after the tweet, S&P 500 future erased all losses and turned green.
Right. In his post, Donald Trump also says we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Not too long ago, there was another proposal that was sent to them through Pakistan, and it was a 5-point proposal which the United States completely rejected. What do you think, Saqib, is in these 10 points now that Donald Trump is really trying to focus on and says that this is agreeable terms now?
Yeah. So before we talk about the negotiations, I think one thing has to be made clear, and that is that Trump has claimed that this is a double-sided ceasefire, but we still haven't heard from the Iranian side. I think the demand from Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, his request to the Iranian authorities was to have reopening of Strait of Hormuz for 2 weeks. We still haven't heard from the Iranian side, but the sense from President Trump's tweet is that Iranian side probably has agreed to it. But we're still waiting for the official word from the Iranian side. In terms of the proposals, I think there has been a lot of back and forth. But the most important thing in President Trump's post is that he is open to negotiating with Iran. He is saying that the 10-point proposal that he's received from Iran, he's open to negotiating on that. It's a reasonable demand. These are reasonable demands from Iran. So we expect that in the next fortnight, when this ceasefire, it nears its expiration, we would see some sort of negotiation. And essentially, you also have to understand the fact that when President Trump said that he would bomb Iran relentlessly, it wasn't that easy for him. There was a lot of internal domestic pressure on him. The Democrats put out statement. There was a talk of, probably impeaching him. So President Trump, it was also difficult for him to follow through on his demands. So probably many analysts would say that this was a negotiation tactic from him, that he was, putting out the stronger side and forcing Iranians to go into negotiations mode. But one thing was important. I think when we talk about negotiations, especially today, I think it was a very dicey day in terms of negotiations. The attack on the Jubail field in Saudi Arabia today, I think it wasn't taken very lightly in the region and even in the US and Pakistan as well. So after that, and for Pakistan to succeed with this, to negotiate with Iran and to talk to the US, I think it is a major diplomatic victory.
A war that we all saw, the whole world saw since the 28th of February, and we have entered April. Almost the first week is ending, and now the president of the United States has also said that as president and also representing the countries of the Middle East, it is an honor to have this long-term problem close to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And he usually signs off with saying President Donald J. Trump, and he did the same here. Saqib, we have seen how it has affected the daily lives of everyone across Pakistan, across Middle East. Do we have any idea? Do we know now that life will get normal after what we've seen in the past few weeks?
I think it's too early to say that. There are a lot of detractors, there are a lot of spoilers in this game. There are stakeholders, there's Israel, and there are other stakeholders that are involved. And we've seen that whenever in the past, when we talk about last year's strikes on the Iranian nuclear installations, we saw that during the negotiations, the negotiators were killed. And even in the current negotiations, previous ones, we saw that there was a lot of spoilers who tried to sabotage the negotiation. So it's still a very fragile situation. But I think the most important announcement that we need right now is the announcement from the Iranian side. If they agree with the demand, the request of Pakistan and the world that they reopen Strait of Hormuz for 2 weeks as a goodwill gesture, then I think it will lead to a solid foundation from where Pakistan can build on and bring both the sides to the table.
It is also very significant since Pakistan's leadership is being publicly credited for influencing a US military decision, because we don't remember from anywhere in our history that has happened before. How significant, Faraz, do you think that has been, and how will this be seen across the globe?
I just want to point out that Faraz recently did a video on S&P 500 moving because of Prime Minister Shehbaz's tweet, and that I've seen that it's making rounds on internet. So that's to Faraz's credit. But go on, just some self-praise.
Absolutely, of course, because markets have been reacting to Pakistan's Prime Minister's statement. So moving on the eastern side of our border, India, their media was very hyped up about Pakistan's intermediary role with the while the U.S.-Iran war was escalating. One of the media program that caught my eye was about why do the world think that Pakistan's mediating role is important? And one of the guests said, Trump, US President Donald Trump, trusts the Field Marshal of Pakistan, Asim Munir, because ever since Pakistan's leadership, including Prime Minister, including Field Marshal's engagement with the United States, Washington has a lot of trust in what Islamabad has to say, what Pindi has to say, which is why these talks were taken serious. Pakistan's proposals were taken serious, and not just by Washington, but also by our friends in Tehran, which is why these proposals, the points in these proposals were accepted by both of these parties. And of course, although we yet to see how Tehran is going to react to this, of course, they've seen a lot of devastation and a lot of destruction during this war. Agreeing to these terms is going to be a bit difficult for them because, of course, who would want more peace than the people in Iran? But I'm sure they will, agree to these points, these proposals, because again, Pakistan has closely monitored the situation. Pakistan has closely talked to all the stakeholders in Iran, in Washington, which is why there is greater hope that Tehran is going to respond positively. And because the entire world was tweeting Islamabad, the court, let's see how these negotiations or these proposals are accepted or are they accepted as Islamabad, the courts in the world, because again, Pakistani leadership is acknowledged, is trusted by all the stakeholders, all the power brokers in the world now.
Yeah, as Faraz said, I think there has to be one distinction that we need to make, and it is to understand the magnitude of what has happened. I mentioned earlier, but I want to mention again that Pakistan has probably averted a third world war. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than this. I mean, we talk about Pakistan's leadership, but talk about the lives this initiative is going to save. We were expecting that President Trump was going to end a civilization, and that is what Pakistan has helped in stopping. And it is a conflict that has engulfed the whole region and probably the whole world, and beyond ordinary lives or lives of ordinary persons. There is economy attached to it, and the impact that we've seen on the economy, stock markets, oil prices, and everything. I think this is a very welcome step. And in Pakistan in general, what we're going to see in the morning is that stock markets are going to respond very positively to it, and markets world over, I'm sure Faraz is going to allude more on that. They are going to respond very positively to it. We need to understand that this is the 40th day of this war, and we've got a breakthrough. And that's thanks to Pakistan.
There have been a lot of talks from India as well. We've seen statements from on social media and from their ministers and diplomats as well. We've seen tweets like we could afford the crude oil going up to $300 and we wouldn't mind that. And to be honest, as Saqib mentioned, that it's a huge sigh of relief at this point with what we've seen so far, with the amount of people that have died, that have lost their lives. As we mentioned, there's economy attached to it and whatnot. But we'll have more coming to you, and we will be talking more about the 10 points that have been proposed by Iran and how that has been received by Donald Trump in the upcoming hours. And we will keep you posted. Please stay tuned.